Thanks, Greg. I've been here about 8, 9 months now, joined planning. I'm on the real property side. So our mission is to uh, try to determine the value of metro property and the highest and best use. Ideally, typically it involves housing. It doesn't always, but it always and typically it involves what we call co-location, meaning if we're going to create a new community center or shelter or a library, that kind of thing, how do we perhaps combine other uses with that, such as housing, to make it a 24-hour type experience? And I think the Brick Church Pike site is like the textbook case of how we can create this kind of what I would call multi-use uh, leverage of this land to go forward with the vertical development. Thanks, Greg.
All right, thank you, Bergen. So I'm going to give a little bit of a recap on what we've been up to since the last time we met, because it's been a while. It's been a busy few months in the planning department. We thank you all for your patience. We know it's been a long process. I think the last time we got together was on the field trip we took to Hadley Park and 26 in Clarksville. And at that time, we were still looking at kind of three alternatives for the site, kind of a metro only version, a metro facilities and townhomes version, and then a version with kind of the metro facilities, but then on top of the library, kind of going vertical with housing and apartments on top of that. As we've kind of discussed the feedback we've gotten, we will, and as we prepare for our report back to the community at large, we have kind of landed on a recommendation that we've worked through in more detail with the consulting team, that we propose to bring to back to the community in the next month or two. And that is the middle strategy, the one where we've got the library, we've got some flex space, we've got the OHS emergency shelter, and then we have ownership options in the back of the site in the form of townhomes. And so we think that is kind of the most responsive to what we heard from the working group, as well as our sense of needs among the community for affordable homeowner opportunities. And so we're excited to walk through the additional work that the team has done, the further thought we've done thinking about kind of the multimodal transportation impacts, the economic feasibility analysis, and just thinking about sort of site cohesion and kind of how we can sort of phase the project out a little bit, thinking about maintaining continuity of operations for the emergency shelter. And so with that, I will pass it over to Gensler to talk through what they've been doing with the site with kind of the site overall.
Thanks a lot, Brian. You want to take it away with the screen? I think you're on mute too.
Can do. Like Greg said, we've gone through multiple iterations, which I believe everybody here has seen a version of that. And I think that we've landed at a really great spot, as Bergen mentioned. We're going to roll through a whole presentation from site plans all the way into 3D views and phasing and some of the precedent ideas about how this would be executed, and then also kind of the look and feel of what we're thinking some of the different areas would look like. So I think everybody is familiar with where we're at. We've got representatives, as stated, from Parkwood Estates and surrounding HOAs. It's really great. We've had some really great feedback and had discussions so far, talking about different uses, talking about different organizations, and how to really maximize the opportunity of this site. As we dive into the site, you really see a split of the site. As some of you know, the southern area of this site here is a floodplain. So that's really why there's no buildings in there, but we'll talk about a few ideas about how we make this more of a community impact type space, really activate it, make it something that is enjoyable outside of just being at a building, being also a community asset for a more active lifestyle, and giving you a variety of spaces to be, in versus just, again, being inside a given building. The layout, as we see here, we've got Brick Church on the right, Parkwood Villa Apartments on the north, and then also on the west. We're proposing right now, coming in off of Brick Church, this building here, this building one, we'd say the community center, OHS, having a variety of uses, everything from the county clerk to incubator type kitchen, flexible type space that would benefit both community and community center itself. Then moving over into residential, this would be the for sale product, townhome type elements. This parking is separated at this point in terms of just count, dedicated residential parking. And then moving over into the library, a 20,000 square foot, just general box at this point in time until we really get into the programmatic elements and designing each building in particular. Designing this again for a flexible parking, knowing that different uses will be used at different times, but also having enough parking spaces for everyone to be able to enjoy the space as needed and not always be hunting for things. When we look at the county clerk, we think of people coming through this drive, going around and queuing on the backside, keeping a lot of the queuing out of the general pathway of the site. This helps everything move and flow so that those coming to the community center or the library aren't inundated with maybe a queue line of 5 or 6 cars blocking their way. Loading for all these elements are also located on the back side of these areas. So along the back edge of the library and then also along the back edge of the community OHS space. We have second level in the residential. It's just a second floor plan to show that the areas there are part of that. Again, just back through the main parking area. One of the things about the site plan, you'll see that there's a bit of parking in the back side and on the north side of the site. Really wanting to make this main thoroughfare this into the site more of a community-based space, something that you'd see more of a retail street, something a little bit more intimate, but also more green space, more of that flexible area, and also possibly has a function of being able to be shut down. We'll see a couple more views of that a little bit later. We'll talk about that, some of the ideas. From a programmatic standpoint, we've got, as we stated, the 20,000 square foot of a public library. We've got the incubator kitchen at 6,000 square feet and really totaling a 78,000 square foot build here. The townhomes are in the 25 to 27 range, or sorry, no, 32 range here. Being able to build something that is impactful to the community, but also something that's really attainable as well. Some overall views from the site. This is a northeast corner. You've got Brick Church Pike down here on the left-hand side. I don't know if you can follow my cursor here, but coming in off of Brick Church and entering the site, you'd have the drive-through county clerk, then you'd have loading dock community center and library. The south edge here, southeast corner, again, Brick Church is on your right. The improved sidewalks, improved greenways, and just green space around the library, giving secondary spaces for people to occupy and really enjoy reading a good book, meeting up with people, and overall just being able to relax away from the stresses of a busy street or anything in the daily life. You start to see where we're trying to make this floodplain or green space more of an activated use, something that allows, again, people to really feed down and filter down into the green space, becoming a massive community element that we think would be a really major benefit to both this development and the surrounding area. You can start to see the residential here, the townhome uses. They're usually in a gang of 7. It makes it really efficient to build. There is one area of 4. You've got dedicated parking out front. You've got dedicated backyards, being able to really create a sense of place and home within those spaces. This is that street that I started to mention earlier on. We think that this is a space, from a day-to-day perspective, there's cars rolling through here, pickups, drop-offs, maybe some street parking as well out front for more ease of use, getting into the library, maybe some timed parking, allowing those that need to be close to the front door to be there. But in times of maybe more of a festival use, we think that this is an area that could be fun to shut down from a Vollard's perspective, make this more of a festival type street, bring in food trucks and really create a community area here where people are not inundated with the parking or the car driving by, but really thinking about how the library and the incubator and the OHS could really celebrate this space. We think that it's a idea that as we evolve, it becomes another community asset and a multi-use of this site. Back into the green space on the south side of the site, we think that there's a really great idea of having community trails, again, trying to create more of an active space for people to enjoy, but then also a way to create a lawn for more, maybe there's, more of a performance space. We know that there's a natural slope to the site. So being able to get maybe a temporary stage at times, or maybe it's a berm to be able to create an active use down the south edge and then have everything tear down to that space. I think that there's opportunity for, a play field, whether that's a soccer field, or any sort of outdoor sporting activities in this area, reserving that, just keeping that open, again, for what has already existed there in terms of a soccer field, but also being able to have something a little bit more manicured than what is existing today. A couple more exterior renderings, just kind of a view of being along the pathway, being out in the park, on the ball field. One of the things that we know is going to be important, we know that there's an active use on site from the cold weather shelter. So as we start to think about phasing of this opportunity, the buildings have been placed pretty specifically to the site. This is the actual site plan, evaluation of what's there. This next phase, or next diagram, shows you the phasing of what we're proposing here. Phase 1 being the OHS, build this facility so that everything from the existing school can flex and move over into the new building. So phase 1A is parking and the OHS, county clerk, and the kitchen. And then phase 1B would be a demolition of the school and then the incorporation of that central drive. That really allows a full 1A or 360-degree wraparound access to the site, and maximizing the opportunity to create frontage along that drive. Phase 2A would be the residential. The idea, again, to bring more of that opportunity of the residential to the community for sale product, creating just another avenue and another product type within the area. And then 2B would be the expansion of the parking in this area, and then the library itself. Then after we get down into phase 3, we think that's where we have the opportunity to improve the green space, create more of a community asset, something that, again, would be a third space for everybody to enjoy. All the phases in total. And then here we're just talking about some precedent images. We know floodplains have the opportunity to be beautiful. They don't just have to be green. We think that there can be a good use. Sorry, excuse me. We think that they can be beautiful. They can be community assets. They can be something that creates more wonderment instead of just being a large green space. So some other spaces around local areas and also in different states and counties, that how they leverage their floodplain and how they leverage that as a community element, and still allowing it to do its active use, which is direct water and allow water to percolate as we get heavy rains. So everything from small play areas to more gardens, maybe not necessarily the planted gardens, but more of a lush green space and active uses there. When we start to think about the building itself and how the landscape really integrates with the buildings, wanting to create that cross section to where there's not necessarily a start and a stop, but something that really blends from the library. We think there's opportunities to have a deck or an outdoor area that really, as you're coming outside of the library, you can overlook the green space and really have just a relaxing element. That element of green space and water being able to play together would be really relaxing. Again, just more executions of what we think around from the landscape, but also from a residential perspective. Having that front stoop, having that front door, having a little bit more character to the front areas of the townhomes and back of the areas would really just provide more of a residential feel and more of a home feel, rather than just a building and a parking lot. And that's it.
All right. Thanks, Brian. Let me open it up. What questions do folks have about kind of where we're at so far? Tatiana?
Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
So back, I think I just had a few things that I wanted to ask and I guess mention. There was a second floor to the OHS space or the community center. There's a second floor. Is that correct?
No, it's only the residential. over
Okay.
here.
All right. And just because I had to ask about that. Also, too, with our buses coming in, wanted to make sure, I guess now that I can see that the bus will have enough room when we go drops them off, there will be enough room for them to come in from Brick Church and I guess circle around to drop people off so that way they'll have room to get out.
Yes, we think that the drop off for the buses would be on the backside here.
Okay.
The opportunity for that, so they'd be able to pull the buses around and fully go around the site and exit.
Okay. And also too, is there a timeline for phase 1A and B as far as like futuristically when we think this is going to start happening?
So let me jump in and field that one. We don't have a timeline yet. There's a couple things that structure the timeline. So what we will do is prepare, and we'll talk a little bit more detail at the end. We'll prepare a final report and provide that to council and to the administration. We're working to get sort of things that would help implement this into the capital improvements budget so that when there's a decision to fund, there's a request in there that can be used. Right now, our understanding, and Jenna, jump in and correct me if I'm wrong here. Our understanding is library has two top priorities for next construction steps. One is Hadley Park, a replacement branch, and the other is a replacement for Richland Park. Those are ones that they have funded preliminary work already that need to move. But then this branch would be sort of in the top tier of potential projects after that. And so I think they have a couple of things they need to work through from a library perspective. Our recommendation, recognizing like we don't control the funding, but our recommendation would be to try to use that time where they're sort of doing their next two branches to try to get the other site pieces moving so that by the time they're ready for the third branch after those two, this site is ready to start taking a look at. We don't have an exact timing of that, but I think that's how we would hope to get kind of the different phasing working together.
And the last piece of information that I wanted to provide to the group is that also remembering Cold Weather Shelter operates from November 1st until March 31st. So traditionally, there is a certain amount of days that we are open. However, our clients that we see on a nightly basis are on the registry. Some may be on the registry. So just trying to keep that in mind as far as how all departments will be working together, because I don't know if meters wise if our space will be the set amount of mileage or square foot that it needs to be away from the residential area and or the library.
Yep, I think we've talked through that with OHS and library in prior meetings. Thank you, Dr. Tucker.
Thank you. And I have several questions, but I'm just going to start with this because someone may also have these other questions. So I'll just start with the initial ones. As I listened, I think I heard the following: the county clerk, the incubated kitchen, the community center, the library, townhomes, shelter, and I don't know if I missed something or not. My question is, at this point, will we be able to have that provided to us, such as what we had before, in terms of us looking at the drawings, and we could go over them ourselves, because it looks like we've got a combination of what we had received earlier in terms of the mixture of 1, 2, and 3, and I'd just like to see what we have as a total, so that I can see the fullness of what is being presented, because in order to be able to understand exactly that the format of the design features, it would be well to be able to have what you sent to us before. And I don't know if that was a schematic design or if that was just what you were just proposing or what, but something that will let us see what you've just shown us here. Is there a way we could get something of that nature?
Yeah, we'd be happy to send the all of the materials today around after the meeting.
Okay, great, because I have what we had before, and it doesn't, they really do not, they're not compatible to the extent that I can understand the fullness of where we
Okay.
are, because there are parts of each in different places. So that's one thing. And then I'll hold the other one, but I do have a second one that I'd like to ask now. As you are looking at how it all flows together and all of the various services that are needed, have we omitted anything that was of critical nature for the community? I heard about the library because I know that was essential. And though I don't live in the Parkwood area, I do live in District 3, and I live in the area. We don't have a library either. We're in the part of Old Hickory Boulevard and going up to the interstate and back to Dickerson Road. So we don't have it either. So I'm real concerned about if we have omitted something that we had said in the initial stages of the planning.
There are a couple of uses that have come out that we were talking about at the start of this a year ago.
Yeah.
And these are primarily things where the departments have found other opportunities, or they've determined the site doesn't fit for them. So among the things that we had looked at earlier was a kitchen for the Metro Action Commission. They indicated they think they have a better opportunity elsewhere. Similarly, we heard the same thing from the Police Activities League, where they I think determined that the site location didn't work for them. And
So
then the third one,
I'm sorry, the incubated kitchen is not for the Metro Action. This is just
that's right.
handle. Okay.
Yep. This would be either a standalone thing as a workforce development component
Okay.
with a partner who can oversee that, such as the farmers market, or potentially as a standalone sort of cafe on its own, just as a destination to complement the library.
Okay. And the last thing, I know we at one point when we were in our discussions, they had the idea of having the fire hall, but we were so concerned that they already have one right down the street and it's not really necessary. But the last thing, regarding the homes, and am I understanding that they're still going to be on the second level above either the library or what?
So no, we have pulled all residential from above the library and above the community shelter,
Okay.
emergency shelter, and kitchen. So they are just two-story townhomes at the back of the
At the back.
site.
Okay. And nothing is on the library. There's no second story above that. Okay.
That's
All
right.
right.
It
Thank
is
you.
a single floor library on its own.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Marvin?
Yeah, just had a question, trying to wrap my mind around square footage and the capacity of the space. And just was trying to end up at a number. Have you all considered the number of individuals we might be able to serve at 17,000 square feet? And is there a dedicated square footage per person that you?
We haven't. We were basing it off of the guidance we got from, and I think we were getting underway when the handoff was made between social services and OHS, but we were going off of the guidance we'd been given on the overall volume of square feet.
Okay.
Is it at this point in time to where I guess that there could be, I know the second story space was only designated for residential, but I think with OHS operating the shelter this past year, I think our office had higher numbers than we've had traditionally in the past as far as cold weather shelter operations are concerned, to where we were seeing a good 350, some nights 400 people. So is there any type of way that that additional space could be potentially used, or um, something of that nature? I don't know if the library may have additional space in theirs or something that OHS could potentially use. Again, we're only open a certain amount of nights, but I do know that even with Brick Church Pike, we were running out of room with I mean, the classroom sizes are really small, but even still, we were running out of room with all of the classrooms that we did have, serving 350 to 400 people a night.
Yeah, let's let's touch base. Like, if y'all can work up what you think kind of an expanded size would be. Let's talk through in detail. Let's follow up and talk through in detail on that.
So in terms of square footage, if you do 50 square per person, you end up with 340 people. And I don't think that's considering furniture pieces, office, and all of that stuff. So we definitely got to pay attention to that, because 17,000 square feet in and of itself sound like a lot of space. But that will fill up fast.
Yeah, like I said, I think there's room. So this is getting into some of the next steps, but these are all sort of conceptual layouts just to get a rough sense of size and spacing. I think if we can, if there's a greater need, we can talk through that at this phase, but there'll be sort of future phases of the actual architectural work that will represent another opportunity to sort of make sure we've got all of the interior spaces that you need, the storage spaces that you need, kind of working through that in a lot more detail. But if y'all have a sense of kind of an expanded footprint that you know of now, like I said, let's see if we can find time this week or maybe next week to talk through that in detail.
Yeah.
I have a can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Callaway, go
This
ahead.
is Chris. Yes. So I have a couple of questions and also comments, and I'll start with the green space and then work our way to the enclosed space. First of all, thank you all for taking so many things in consideration. It looks as though you did a lot of environmental studies in terms of how the space is going to look and also the slope, and considering the drainage as well. So with the green space, my biggest concern was, or comment was actually about the usage and the potential for entertainment, theater. It's somewhat reminiscent of downtown Bicentennial. And I was wondering if a slope could be created, if you consider that in your environmental studies, to even make something like an amphitheater or some sort of space for performances, as you were mentioning before.
Yeah, there will need to be a slope to this to get down to grade and to the different elevations. So creating anything more above what would displace water, I would imagine, wouldn't necessarily, it would just have to be natural in this instance, but that's kind of the idea around this central area here, is that would be your amphitheater, that would be your performance space with the natural slope needed just to make the water flow down to the nearby creek.
Okay. All right. And then if you could go back to the renderings as well. For the library, I know it was discussed at one point that the library could be 2 stories, as we were talking about parking space. And was it taken out just because of elevation or how it looks that the buildings could not be 2 stories and consider a parking space underneath?
I think at this time, I mean, we can definitely dive into providing parking space underneath the library, but just trying to keep everything from, very buildable, constructible, not creating a podium element that the library would have to sit on top of. And then being a 1-story library, removing the need for any kind of elevators was also kind of a critical element, just making it very accessible with a given grades on the site. But everything parks, as it is today, with the number of parking spaces along the backside over in this area. So we feel like it didn't need that kind of solution, but I think as we develop the library, that might be another alternative to it. And there's no, I mean, we definitely could, depending on the heights needed, make it a 40-foot tall, 220-story or 20-foot levels of library and condense it and create more parking on the backside. So there's a lot of iterations. This was just one of the basic ones to, kind of win out.
Yes, I was thinking about even the multi-level, so having one level for the accessibility, originally, and then like considering that the backside be 2 stories with the elevation for additional parking. That might have been a rendering long ago, or it could have been in my head, but I seem to remember something like that.
No, we did. We
and,
definitely did have a 2-story at
oh, okay.
at one point in time with parking underneath the
Okay.
library. Yes. It was just in this instance, we wanted to remove structured parking just because of the cost and make sure that we can just site park things to make sure that the building itself is attainable in terms of price.
Okay. And then for the residential portion, I see that you do have the 2 entrances. Would that, I'm just thinking about the compatibility of safety, especially when we're talking about the community center or the flex space. Would a gated residential area be considered?
I'm, I'm sorry. I'm getting over a sickness this weekend. I apologize. We do anticipate. I don't think it's shown in the renderings, but we do anticipate those being gated entrances.
Okay. And my third question is also about the OHS needs. And again, this goes into the 2-story portion. So I know that there was a top level, like when we have the community center, am I understanding that that top level is an additional space? Is that 2-story?
No, it was just a double height. Given how long the OHS operates, we thought that as a good community asset, it could be indoor courts of some sort. So something that's multifunctional. So outside of the normal time of the operation of the OHS, community could come in and use it, whether it be pickleball, basketball, volleyball, something of that nature. Just having a multi-use with that height.
Or
But
an
to your
event
point,
space.
there's definitely, I'd say, opportunity to create double height space or 2 levels maybe at the front. One of the things we had talked about, sorry, I'm going to skip back here, is creating something where offices could be on the 2nd floor, having more overview of the lower level. So creating more of a perch, more of an opportunity to have more passive oversight of those inside. So the full 17,000 square feet could be dedicated both to people and community uses, whether that be showers or food, and all the offices would actually be up. So separating those that are operating it, kind of on a daily basis.
Okay, that's great. I know we went to Hadley Park. I missed that, but Coleman Park also has a setup that I believe could be beneficial for OHS as well as the community during those seasons where the community center does need to be used so that it's not completely cut off to the community as well. And their layout does have space there with some modifications. It could actually be enough space to serve and also still have with the 2-story, like there's a track up top, but I mean, there could be other renderings, but with the 2-story, I believe, there is that community component where the community does say, you know what, we would still love to use the space as well, even though OHS is here. So meeting those needs of the capacity, because I know it was an emergency shelter, and it was not able to stay open because of, for various reasons. We want to make sure that when we do set it up, that it is, that it does meet the needs for the demand in this area, and at the same time also meet the needs for those who would like to come during the day and still use that as an outlet. So I was just thinking the community center may consider, if the funds are available, a 2-story element, because they do need the space sometimes to store the food and to store the furniture and the cots and things, and that may disrupt the normal use of those who are residents at the community center. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around how does this flex space look when it needs to be modified for those times of the year.
Yeah, I think we'll get into a little bit more of the details of that as we develop that, but those are great comments. Just one thing that we were talking about, we think that the main entry, for those that are not necessarily using it during a cold weather shelter is off the main street. And those being bussed in, coming off the back, trying to help separate those entering, that might be on the registry, separating from the front doors of the library. So those working there might come in the front door. Those maybe wanting to use it from a community's perspective will come in the front door, different types, security elements. And just allowing them to have a front door that isn't necessarily the backside of the building. Again, trying to create some separation and some opportunities, on both sides.
I think something else to note. I know Dr. Trotter just provided square footage, and it totally slipped my mind before we started talking about this. I think the design, which having a second floor would be useful as far as, I mean, our staff, we are a metro department, so a lot of our staff do have day-to-day jobs that they have, and then they go to work afterwards. So if they have that opportunity to work in the shelter, it would be very useful. However, there are times in which whether it's inclement to where we have to operate for 24 hours. So during those times in which the shelter does not close, I don't know how, the flex space will operate if we, from a metro, it's a metro mandated thing. So there's going to be times in which we have to stay open because that is what metro mandates. So I don't know if the space will still be able to be utilized during those time periods in which there's snow on the ground or ice or something of that nature, because we don't close during that time. And I think this past season we were open consecutively, maybe 5 to 7 days, and not closing. So I think that might be something to consider as well, as though during cold weather season, there may be times in which it's not open to the public because the cold weather shelter is still open.
I
Yeah,
just
I'll
want to
just
chime.
add to that
Oh,
before we
sorry.
get off of that and
Mhm.
I get past that. I want to add to that about the shelter in the cold weather space. When we initially started talking about this, and I think it was alluded to at the very beginning of the presentation about trying to make this a 24-hour, 7 day a week type operation, and having offices as a part of the community center would be critical to that. I mean, that would make it a 7 day a week, or more routinely operated building instead of just how it is now, where they go when it's um and the temperatures demand that the overflow shelter be open, they're there. But then when they're not there, there are break-ins at the shelter. They've had to hire security, 24-hour security to be at the parking lot, because even when the shelter is not open, people are coming there and bringing their things there, or just wanting to be there because that's a safe space for them to be, but the shelter is not open. So that needs to be considered as far as if we're going to make this an operational campus where it's operational most of the time and somebody is there most of the time, then it needs to be considered to have a two-story. I mean, it looks like from the design that we're doing just the basic, the bare minimum for this project. It doesn't look like it's being viewed as something that is innovative or attractive. Even at this point, it's just getting some buildings and getting us there. It's how I perceive how I perceive the design at this point. um, but that is a very important factor, that we need to have space for offices. It needs to have space for growth, because if the numbers for the service continue to rise, then we'll be right back in this place in 5 years, if we ever get it started with it. We'll be back in this place in another 5 years of needing or having a situation where we don't have enough space to serve the community as well as the metro offices. So having 2 stories for the community center, going to the incubation center, incubation kitchen. Is the incubator kitchen a part of the community center? Because the community center needs a kitchen as well. So is that why that's overlapping like that?
I think we're anticipating. So it's a little bit of a fuzzy idea until we get sort of a specific operator identified. I think we envision it as something that is a standalone facility, but can work in partnership with OHS. Like if there are times where they need that, again, that'll depend a little bit on the specific operator to sort of
I mean,
figure
but
out
they need a
exactly what
kitchen
that.
every day. I've
Mhm.
been to the shelter when it's been open for overflow, and they're feeding. I mean, that's the first thing they do is feed the clients when they come in. And so they need a kitchen. They also need a bathroom with showers.
Mhm.
So that needs to be considered as space,
Sure.
where they have showers, and lockers, a locker room. They need to have a locker room. I mean, yeah, there's a lot that I guess you all need to have another discussion with OHS to really figure out what all the needs are that they have. Because I can tell you, just from going down there once or twice and volunteering, that won't be enough space.
Okay. All right.
And I think something else to note is even with us doing 24-hour shelter operations, like Jennifer Gamble has just stated, Councilmember Gamble has stated, when we are 24 hours, some leave, some do not. With this library being on campus, they will utilize this library because it's going to make more sense for them to just leave the shelter and go to the library until we're open again. Because a lot of our people, as she stated, when we're not open, they will stay outside until that following night when we do open and just sit on our porch until we open. So with the library being made on site, I just want to let everybody know that this library will probably be heavily used by that population because it's going to make more sense for them to just go across the sidewalk to the library until we open versus them catching the bus back downtown and waiting at the bus station.
I have several more questions. I just wanted to piggyback off of that. Before we got too far off the community center. Going back to ingress and egress, I don't see, so it looks like this one road off of Brick Church Pike is the way in. Where is the other ingress? I don't see
There's not another ingress.
onto this site. Oh, that's gonna serve the community center, the county clerk's office, the library, and even the residential to the back. Where's the other ingress?
There is not one.
Okay, so well, that's a problem. There needs to be more than one ingress and egress into this site. Um, and the idea that all the parking is in the back, I think right now there's parking in front of the building. I think for at least the library, there needs to be some parking in the front as well. And then, so where are the entrances? The entrances are on this one road that you have, this one ingress. That's where all the entrances into the facilities.
Yes, they would be off this main entry here.
Okay, yeah, and so I don't know how we would shut that down with food trucks because that's the only way in and the only way out. So that's, logistically, that really wouldn't be very conducive for anybody that I can see if everybody's using that same road, even the residential people. There needs to be an ingress to the back of the property for the residential so that they don't even have to come through that. I mean, that should be
Yeah,
kind of
it
on
would
its
be this
own.
route to the north. So they would be able to
Originally, it was
split
by
off.
the existing electric, correct? Wherever the existing, wasn't that supposed to be another, and the, in the
This here?
northeast corner?
There's
Yes,
a lot
the
of slope
northeast
to the
corner.
site. So currently we aren't using this there. This is about 10 feet above this area. So there's a lot of slope. It's not just it's not a big flat site. So that was the main reason for not having it there. And there's existing electrical and telecom elements that at this time, until we dive in a little bit further into the site planning, what we can do with that and how we can move it. We've chosen to kind of keep it there for now.
Or perhaps you can put one to
If I
the
could go
south
back,
of the site, the south of the library, where where the green space, the outdoor space would be, having another road on that end that goes back to the residential and maybe services the library as well. But not putting all of the parking, because even with the library, if you have the parking in the back of the library, what about people who are going to walk? We do have sidewalks, so we need to make it conducive for multimodal, not only people who are driving, but people who are walking, and then the buses that would need to turn around that are dropping off at the community center. would need to, I mean, I see where you have this circle going around there, which I guess would be fine for that, but then
Yeah, it's
having
all
another
two-way.
ingress. Yeah,
So it's all two-way. It's not just a single one-way. All
yeah, I
the
get
gray
that.
here are the sidewalks that would also be accessible by bike, walking, and all sorts. Placing the entry into the library will be critical, but we didn't think that if we had an activity going here, that would shut down sidewalks and prevent those from accessing the building, in multiple areas. So, we did look at bringing a roadway to the south. This gets into the floodplain. Unfortunately, like this area here is where the start of the floodplain is, and we've talked in ways that, or talked with Metro Water about having a roadway, even if it was fully permeable. They've been against that so far, and in order to not necessarily just make a pavement kind of ring around the library, we really wanted to have a space that if you're using the library, you had a way to get to the green space and have more activated and control and connection to that green space. We also see from a traffic standpoint, or from a car loading standpoint, one exit for over 600 cars. There's only 230 parking spaces in here. So from a parking load and a car load, we think that the one exit, one ingress egress would work fairly well, especially given that you have, if you did shut this down, you have a relief valve to the north. We don't think that this is shut down all the time. It's just maybe once or twice a month at certain areas. So I think that gets into programming, just how we manage it, and further design of the singular buildings to make it work. And this will definitely evolve as it gets further into the development. So, but definitely, I appreciate all the feedback.
The other thing regarding the use of the library is also the concern, just from a family standpoint. And again, why I was thinking there would be 2 stories. The downtown library has laid out, and I've been down there several times with groups, with younger children and school groups, and we've often had a concern about the homeless population on certain floors. And so they have a dedicated children's area that is, for safety for those who, those families who have younger children. If the library is only one level, and we are talking about, the homeless population coming over into the library, that would be a concern, because I've had several instances where there was not enough security in the downtown library for us to even provide bathrooms, safe bathrooms for our children to go into. And so we've always had to resort going to the children's area. If there is a library, if the library did have a second story where there could be a dedicated space, and it made sense to have a dedicated space specifically for children, I think that the renderings would be a little bit more complete and closer to serving the entire needs of the community. Because again, we really want to look at the growing family population as well, and how the growing family population is really going to be served. Our youth really need a lot of support in this community. And if we're going to include educational programming and incubator services, and continued support for, specifically for our younger population and our families, then considering the multi-use of the community center beyond OHS, and then also beyond even the aging population to our youth, is going to really be essential. So I echo what Councilwoman Gamble said, in terms of we're going to look at this again, because the population is going to change, the needs are going to change, and especially if we're talking about residential in the very back, then who are we going to attract? More than likely, younger families. So we want to make sure that this is a safe space for everyone, and considering that second story for the library and even for the community center to be able to block off some of the space and to provide some of those safer spaces. Just based on my experience, I know that's going to be a huge concern. And families being able to say, we're actually going to use the library, because we have a safe space to go to. But I just can't see taking my children over there to or any of my groups taking them to the library, knowing that this is going to be an all-encompassing space and there's not going to be separate space.
Ms. Calloway, thank you so much for that point. I will say I apologize to everyone. We are at time for this meeting, and it feels like I'm hearing a lot of great feedback, and I think this definitely warrants more conversations with the project team as well as Bergen. So we'll definitely make sure we share the renderings with everyone, and just to make sure to clarify that these are specifically just like blocks. These aren't designed. This isn't architectural. The consultants were specifically just working on the space, square footage and all that good stuff. Pillars and Ring and Smith also have the financials as well as the environmental and the MMTA, which is the multimodal transit analysis. I'm not sure how much we can get into that with the rest of the consultants, but we will definitely share this with everyone because I think you all have provided us with incredible feedback, and we definitely need more conversations to happen that the project team can take on, as well as with Bergen, because he's going to take the project on after we wrap this up. But I think for the sake of time, I'm not sure if Pillars or Reagan Smith can quickly say anything with this remaining time we have. Or we could potentially send around actually the findings that they had, because we have the MMTA and we do have the financial analysis, and then all of y'all's input will be going into the final report.
Hey, Kelsey, this is Brandon at
Yes.
Reagan Smith. I think I'd be happy to, if we want to do a few minutes right now on it, or like you mentioned, we could put together a brief summary, boil down our process and methodology, and then findings and recommendations, boil that down to one page in sort of an executive summary format, something that could be distributed to this working group and to all of the different folks that are stakeholders and involved in some way. So that they can see what we've done, how we've done it, and what the outcome of that is, and then maybe pair that up with an update from your end about the process and where that fits into paths forward and how things get transitioned over to Bergen or anything like that.
Brandon, I think that'd be a perfect executive summary. Would be really great. So I think this group we can send that to everyone, and then the project team will be happy to meet with everyone in the working group regarding that. If there's any follow-up questions.
We've got a couple folks with hands up. Can we get
Yes.
final comments real quick before we wrap?
I would just like to say two things. One, with the amount of concern that seems to be still prevalent, I'm not sure that the finality of the meeting is there not an opportunity for an additional meeting for discussion? Because sometimes you can read something and you get one interpretation. However, if you have a discussion and if you have feedback, then you have another. That's the concern. One thing that I want to say. The other was, while the needs of OHS are real important, when considering also the needs of the community itself in terms of what's going to be able to be in a safe mode for children, especially, and that was brought up. My concern is with that needs to be a little bit more discussion with that, and especially in terms of before an expansion or for any additions be made to the facility, to the site or to the site renderings for such. There's some more discussion that's needed, but I'm going to leave it with that. I don't know if there's a possibility. I'm not sure in terms of the time frame, in terms of the reason for not having another meeting, but it seems like to me there are a lot of loose ends. But I appreciate what you have done, though.
Yeah, I think we'd be happy to meet again. It may be something where, because of budget, the consultants aren't here, but on the staff side, we can continue talking. But we'll work that out on our end.
Good.
I was going to just say that I apologize for having to step away, and so I may have missed some comments. And one of the comments I think that I thought I missed had to do with closing off the entryway at some point with food trucks. And if that's the case, what that would mean is that it would keep folks from getting to us. So we do need to have, I guess, a little bit more conversation about what needs to happen here. I mean, I don't know that, Greg, that we can call things all wrapped up, because again, I think that
Yeah.
that we still have some questions that need to be answered. So
Okay, sure. Yep. We'd be happy to, like I said, get back together and kind of, we've got a list of things to sort of follow up on. I think we'll probably reach out to folks and talk in a little bit more detail for some of the specific questions that people had. So, you know, if we're not quite there, that's okay. It'll take how long it takes. But thank you all for getting together with us. I think even if we're not quite the final thing, I feel like the end is in sight, and we've got, I think, a pretty good structure here. So we're looking forward to continue working and getting to the point where everyone's comfortable.
Certainly go in the right direction. So
thank you.
Thank you for
It
that.
is.
Thank you for hearing us before and kind of incorporating all of those other suggestions and concerns.
Thanks for
Absolutely.
continuing to include us in this process. We really
Yes, we got to have a
appreciate it.
county clerk's
We
office.
really appreciate you guys looking seriously at us, because it's been a few years since anything's happened for us. So I'm excited about where this can potentially go and what it can potentially be, not just for us, but for the community. So thanks so much.
We definitely need that service in our community.
Thank you. Thank you so
All right.
much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good
All right.
afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks,
You too.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.